morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makide. It is the 19th day of January. Welcome to the show.
One more day before it's the weekend. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Samuel Wemo.
I don't want to say good morning, accurate timekeepers, debaters, and of course our audience. Good morning. Welcome to the program. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.
Well, you know, we cannot but keep talking about all these conversations around the elections and all of that. I mean, if you've been listening to and watching Channels Television, you know that we keep a count of election 101, so to speak, or at least you get a good understanding of the things that are required of us as part of the elections. And then one is wondering exactly what, you know, two legal luminaries are asking, you know, for clarification about, as Mr. Olanipekwa and Mr. Bakuba asking, you know, so for some clarification. But I thought that was something already, you know, in the kitty. What exactly the questions will be as to what are the criteria exactly for declaring the winner of an election. I mean, I thought the law was clear, right, Bukola?
Oh, I thought it was clear too until, you know, first of all, just to mention that Mr. Bakuba may have been clairvoyant as well as exercising hindsight ahead of what could happen after February the 25th, 2023, because, you know, if you watched Politics Today yesterday, Sheon was saying we have not just 2 horses now, possibly even 4 horses. So what happens if the votes are evenly split between the 4 horses? You know, there's a second part of Section 134 that Mr. Bakuba quoted yesterday that talks about if there are, is it 3 candidates now, that when the vote goes into a second round, then the winner will win by simple majority. So INEC needs to interpret all of those possibilities. In the first case, what if, you know, the candidate who emerges victorious doesn't win the FCT? And I recall he said that from his research, not all the candidates in previous elections, presidential candidates now, have won the FCT. So what happens to their election? Does it become invalid? So all of these possibilities are things that should be looked into, and then INEC should perhaps, you know, give us an interpretation before we head into a constitutional conundrum in a few weeks from now. So it is very critical to, you know, sit down, take a back seat, and you know, look at the possibilities that could arise from the elections, because this election looks like it's going to put, you know, spring up a lot of surprises. Maupe.
Just yesterday, you know, myself and Chamberlain were having this conversation, and when I raised it with him, I simply said, well, but the Constitution seems clear enough. This was before we saw the letter written by Senior Advocate Olisa Agbakuba to INEC. And do not forget that for the past couple of weeks on this station, a civil society organization, Center for Democracy and Development, has been running a series of campaigns trying to educate the Nigerian public on what it will take for a candidate to be declared in an election. For almost all the elections that we've had in this country, we've always said that, oh, a candidate doesn't only have to win majority, a candidate also has to win 2/3, that's 25%, into 2/3 of the federation, including the FCT. So I'm not a lawyer, but if you were to ask me what my own simple interpretation of that will be, it will mean that the FCT is also counted as a state. But, I mean, what do I know? The lawyers might have a different view. The courts might have a different view. We know that oftentimes when the states are counted, you know, the FCT is the Federal Capital Territory, but in some instances, it does operate as a state and is counted as such. So maybe what the Constitution is saying, and I think that this is where clarity could come in, is that the FCT is counted like every other state. So if you win the FCT, and that's what makes your 2/3, you know, then perhaps you have carried the day. But, you know, just what we thought was clear enough, and what the civil society organizations have been going to town educating people on. Then we now see senior advocates saying, INEC, please clarify, what do we need? Is it majority or two-thirds, or in, two-thirds of 25%, or 25% in two-thirds of the federation? Let us know which one it is. And then you also see there, Mr. Olanipekun, SAN2, also raising issue with, I'm trying to remember what he's raising issue with now. Yeah, he's saying something about a booby trap in the Electoral Act 2022, saying that it does empower a returning officer to review his own declaration of a candidate. So after you've declared a candidate, there's something empowering you to look at how that, assuming something comes up, you can look at how, how that candidate was declared, and then you can review it and announce somebody else. He thinks that that is a booby trap. So I don't think we should sit lightly on it. I think that these are, when lawyers throw this up and they're senior advocates, I don't think that it should be taken lightly. Let's not forget what happened in the U.S. election. We know that they have, will I say, a college of, what do they call them now? Is it a college of voters? I'm trying to remember the exact name that they use.
Electoral college.
Well, you have to win the college, the electoral college. Yeah, that's what it is called. So it's not just by winning majority of votes across the country, you also have to win the electoral college. So there is a certain amount of, number of people, electoral college per state. And whoever it is that wins that particular state gets you get all of the electoral college. So we saw a situation where Mrs. Clinton, Hillary Clinton, won majority of the votes across the United States, but lost the electoral college. She did not get the electoral college votes. And that was how she lost out on being president of the United States. So this is what we have in our country. This is what our Constitution says, that you must not only win, at least that's how we have been reading it, that's how it has been interpreted for how long we know, until this issue has now been raised again for proper clarification. We have been reading it that you must win majority of votes. Not only that, you must also have a spread of 25% in at least two-thirds of the federation. If that needs clarification, by all means, the courts should quickly make a pronouncement on it so that everybody is well educated on the matter.
Well, I guess it's just one of those things that, in my opinion, Mike Igene had often talked about. Look, let the political parties go study. That's what he often used. Study the Electoral Act. But this one coming from legal luminaries, Olisa Agbakoba and Wale Olanipekun, one wonders exactly how both INEC and the courts will be interpreting it. Then the question is, who is going to institute or initiate this conversation with the courts for this clarification that is being sought? Because at the end of the day, people are going to spend their blood, their sweat, their energies to go vote. So 50% of votes is not enough. That sounds like what the law is saying.
25%.
Two-thirds majority.
25% and two-thirds.
So one is wondering exactly how all of that is going to play out. But it is very important, not just for the politicians, but for Nigerians as well, because this thing called rule of law is everyone's business. Well, one of the rules on this program is to look at the papers. Let's get to that right after this break. Let's begin with the Nigerian Tribune this morning, and it's a call, exactly, that's it on the front page. Section 65 of Electoral Act, dangerous. Stories on page 2, and it's ascribed to Olani Pekun. It's as simple as that. It's just what we just spoke about as well this morning. Everyone needs to do what needs to be done. Well, if you're wondering why it is coming up now, better late than never. How about we get into that middle of the sea, so to speak, and then this whole issue comes up. So now it's out there. What needs to be done by who? The details you will find on page 2 if you check the pages of the paper this morning. Of course, beside those pictures are all the stories you'll find on the inside pages of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. The first, right under the word dangerous, FG states LGs shared 990.189 billion naira in December 2022. Find the details of that on page 6 of the paper. And at the bottom of the page, on page 30, you'll find $53 million debt. Emefiele appeals against summons. What all of that is about, you'll find on page 30. An IGP not retiring at 60 has a 4-year tenure. Police Affairs Minister. Again, that's another hot topic that's already making the rounds. That's the Nigerian Tribune today.
And from there, let's flip to This Nigeria. It appears it's not just the senior advocates that are worried about the elections. We also have former military administrator expressing some concern. And this is how This Nigeria captions it. Polls may be violent, inconclusive, unless, you find the ellipsis there. But former military head of state, Abdusalami Abubakar, raises the alarm, says Nigerians deeply concerned about insecurity, deeply concerned also about constitutional implications, as the case may be, especially from last night. Let's go to the bottom of This Nigeria to also find yet another, well, I won't call it concern just yet. Let's find out what experts and analysts will be saying about it later on. But this is the report for today. Elections, IGP not going on retirement, says Minister, as FEC approves draft bill to establish police training schools. About the retirement, just yesterday, news emerged that the president had extended the tenure of the police inspector general. Well, he was supposed to retire before the elections, but his tenure has been extended. And there's some talk around that. We'll find out what the implications are. A few more stories. Just before we exit the election, this is beside the nameplate. And the governor of Rivers State is speaking. He says, G5 governors to support a presidential candidate with integrity. I hope integrity doesn't become relative. The last I checked, it's a quality of honesty and consistency.
Well, integrity is a word, period.
Okay, so Nigerians are waiting. The suspense is too much. We have 36 days now to the elections. Okay, 2 more stories. Okay, just one more before we exit This Nigeria. NDLEA secures 3,733 convictions in 24 months. That's the boss of the NDLEA speaking. Let's leave it there now for This Nigeria.
Well, take a look at The Guardian this morning and look at what they have there. $1 billion anti-terrorism spending. That's, don't forget that the president's claimed that we've spent $1 billion already trying to win the war against Boko Haram in the northeast. I think that's what they're following up this morning. $1 billion anti-terrorism spending poses on Buhari's security success. Wednesday, how over-invoicing, lack of transparency make nation unsafe. No price too high to pay for political stability. That's a quote. You might want to know who's speaking. Retired Deputy IGP justifies anti-terrorism funding. Insecurity wars under current administration. CISLAC insists that they have a number of respondents on this particular report, which they put together. You find details somewhere on page 6 of the paper. You have a number of other stories at the bottom here. Senior advocates question legal framework of 2023 elections. I understand Nigeria's issues, says Kwankwanso at Chatham House. So he was also at Chatham House yesterday speaking on what he intends to do should he be made president of Nigeria. At the bottom there, CBN allays fears over counterfeit new Naira note. That is also there. They have a number of other stories. Obong of Calabar re-elected days after sacking by Supreme Court. And we understand that judgment was not the first time it was coming when the Obong was being sacked. We understand he was re-elected and then sacked again and re-elected again. You know, something I read that said no matter how many times he's sacked, he'll continue to be re-elected. You might want to read page 29 for what exactly the issue is. Or what the story is about around the Obong of Calabar. But the story there says he's been re-elected days after sacking by Supreme Court. The Supreme Court didn't bar him from recontesting. Look at that picture. What 1,000 words. The array, beautiful array of politicians you see and their wives, their spouses right there in the picture, from former President Olusegun Obasanjo to former governors, journalists. When I mean journalists, they're very senior journalists, of course. They're honoring whom you would refer to as a statesman, Chief Emeka Anyaoku, who clocked 90 yesterday, being honored. I'll leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Certainly something worth celebration. 90-year-old man. Daily Trust newspaper this morning is interested in what went on yesterday at Chatham House. Wrong choices responsible for Nigeria's woes. That's ascribed to Kwankwanso. But there are interesting writers there. Why merger talks with Obi collapsed. Find the details of that. Win your polling units. Get appointments. Contracts. Article tells PDP members. Okay, so that's some kind of transaction I just saw right there. But make of it what you will. It's on the inside pages. Reject my husband after 4 years if he underperforms. Tinubu's wife. The details you find there. And don't vote along ethno-religious lines, Obi. Find the details of all on the inside pages of the paper today. And of course, the pictures there speak to some of those issues. Right under the pictures, free trade zones attracted over $30 billion investments to Nigeria. That's ascribed to the president. The details you'll find on the inside pages. And right under the nameplate, this is interesting. One of the 3 stories there. Bad Belle prevented Abiola from becoming president. Ascribed to Obasanjo. That's the Daily Trust newspaper today.
Well, I'm sure you're as interested in that story as I am. I'm certainly going to follow up on it after the program. But from there, let's flip to the Vanguard newspaper. The Vanguard newspaper chooses to lead with something entirely different this morning. And it's something that is as important to you as it is to everyone on this side of the divide. Gradual removal of petrol subsidy starts April. Ascribed to the federal government, but specifically we'll find out who's speaking shortly. Those campaigning are saying they'll get rid of it quickly. It's safer for the current administration to start removing fuel subsidy from second quarter. That's ascribed to the finance minister. Adds 3.25 trillion naira subsidy cost must be exited. That's about a quarter of the budget. So why not remove it before the approval of the budget?
And how much of that in the revenue generated by the government? It's about half, if not more. As at last year, I think. But hey, that's that.
I can't resist the urge to compare it, with the budgets of some other countries. Benin Republic, for instance. I know I was going to stick to the Fifth Amendment there. But let's look at other stories this morning. This one is also related to oil issues, and it's just, under the big story. Buhari approves 1.9 trillion naira for NNPC's intervention in 44 road projects. I believe that should be under the 2023 budget. Well, you have to get more details. You find them inside Vanguard, page 31, read to be precise. Take a look at this one at the bottom strip. Offer bank robbery. How Kyari offered me 10 million naira visa to implicate Saraki. You'll find details of that inside Vanguard, page 6, to be precise. Apparently, the last has not been heard from that robbery of about a few years ago. Yeah, involving the former Senate, well, in which former Senate president was named. Of course, the case has not been put to rest just yet. And lastly, above the nameplate, you find these ones. Nigeria's next president should come from Southeast. That's ascribed to the NCF. You find details on page 10. And finally, Buhari, Obasanjo, Adebanjo, Sanwo-Olu, Obi, Tinubu, others hail Anyoku at 90. Let's leave it there for the Vanguard newspaper.
Well, when you look at New Telegraph, they're also towing the line that we just saw on the front page of the Vanguard this morning. FG to fast-track fuel subsidy removal from June to April. Some people will say you might as well just take it out now and let us have petrol, because this scarcity is not making any sense. The fact that people have to wake up early and go and queue in January doesn't make sense. So let us understand what is going on. Look at the right. It says COVID-19 delayed initial decision to ensure cost does not exceed 3.23 trillion trillion naira. Is fuel subsidy really worth 3.23 trillion naira? Is that the best use of 3.23 trillion naira? Looking at the myriad of all that we're currently facing as a country, I think that there needs to be tough questions asked of us. I mean, we should ask ourselves those questions. We should ask our leaders, because they're the ones who determine that, you know, this is the best use of our resources. And it's not, these are very, very scarce resources that we barely have. Right now, the National Assembly has been raising questions on ways and means. Ask you know, especially on the request of the president, that it be converted into bonds. So there are big questions as to our debt profile, how it is ballooning, and whether or not we can continue to pay this amount of money, this humongous amount of money on fuel subsidy. Of course, everybody likes to buy cheap petrol. I want to buy petrol cheaply, but if this is the cost, you know, and the fact that future generations are going to pay for it, there needs to be questions as to whether or not, you know, one can really enjoy, you know, cheap fuel with a clear conscience. Now, that's the big question. Page 4 is where you will find the story in case you want to follow up on why the federal government intends to fast-track fuel subsidy removal from June to April. Look at the bottom there. We won't stop general election in Southeast, attributed to Masob. They're still in existence, that's what they're saying, by that story as well. They were there before IPOP came, but they're saying that they will not stop general election in Southeast. SPV saga, apologize to me or risk exposure. Atiku tells Tinubu, so you find that story right there. Kwankwanso, how mineral resources struggle escalated terrorism in the north. 2023, Christian elders express concern over inflammatory, inciting comments. And if you look at this, this is another reason why you should be concerned. Do not read any story in isolation. Try and read them together. Excess crude account depletes by 99% to $473,754. That's where we used to keep excess earnings. But in spite of the fact that crude oil prices have been at some of the highest in recent months following the war between Russia and Ukraine, there have been questions as to what we have used the earnings from that. Well, some people argue that there's been very little earnings, especially with the theft, a humongous theft of crude oil in the Niger Delta, which we understand is now being handled. But this is where our excess crude account currently is. Naira redesign curbs Nigeria's pre-election cash surge. So maybe it's actually having some of the effect which the CBN, well, maybe it is not the CBN, but at least the president admitted that he wanted it to have. Page 25 is where you find details. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Well, just this quick one on the front page of Daily Independent. I wonder if you agree or not. Daily Independent front page, look at it. Police officers are less corrupt now, FG declares. Says no retirement for IGP Baba before 2023 elections. FEC okays 1.35 billion, 31 utility vehicles for Ubani cleanup. Approves 2.29 billion naira for aircraft assembly plant in Nigeria. Gives NNPC Limited nod to invest 1.9 trillion naira in 44 federal roads. But I love the very first headline. Police officers are less corrupt now, FG declares.
Do you agree, Ayo?
That's what the news says. I report the news. I don't agree or disagree.
But I want you to process it. Do you agree?
Processing takes time, so
when was the last time you had to part with some form of naira to get out of a police net?
As I was saying, well, that's too much of the papers we can take right now. We swing to the issues, one of them coming up from what the INEC chairman spoke about when he appeared at Chatham House. Stay with us.
This is what they call 21st century. When my customer say I want to use POS, I will just bring out my phone, open the application, press this code. I don't have anyone that using POS anymore.
This coming election in the continent's most populous country is shaping up to be an exceptional event. The fanfare and theatrics that had accompanied previous speakers at Chatham House was strikingly absent today. In its place, though, a strong feeling of enormous expectations, which Professor Yakubu attempted to ease.
It is exactly 38 days to the next general election in Nigeria, which I have both the privilege and challenge of leading its proper delivery. Elections in Nigeria have become events that attract extensive international attention and concern, not only because of the sheer size of the deployment, but also because of the importance of Nigeria in Africa, and most particularly in the West Africa sub-region. Understandably, therefore, there are enormous expectations, both within Nigeria and internationally, about the conduct and management of the 2023 general election. The expectations place a great responsibility on the election management body, the Independent National Electoral Commission. We are not taking these responsibilities lightly. We appreciate that there are challenges and concerns, but we also realize that there is enormous goodwill and support, both in Nigeria and beyond. Consequently, we believe that by forthrightly sharing our experiences and discussing the challenges openly, we can surmount the challenges and ensure that our elections in Nigeria continue to get better. May I, on this note, once again reiterate our position that the Commission is not contemplating, let alone planning, to postpone the 2023 general election. We are going ahead to conduct the election as scheduled.
Free, fair and credible elections is what the Commission chief has promised the international community. But the threats facing Nigeria are multiple and widespread.
A lot of vote buying and vote selling transactions have to do with the level of ballot secrecy. So how is INEC going to improve and guarantee ballot secrecy in the upcoming elections?
The BVAS system has been used before, but not without teething problems, especially in the recent governorship election. What guarantees can you give to the Nigerian people that all the problems have been ironed out and it's going to work properly when it's counting 90 million votes?
But we have the machines for the 2023 general elections, but we didn't want to take chances. Each and every machine has been tested and confirmed that the machine is functional. So actually for the last 2 weeks or so, our officials were in all the states of the Federation testing those machines. And the functionality of the machines is simply very encouraging. So we'll not take chances. The second thing we are going to do, and pretty soon, is to conduct mock accreditation exercise nationwide ahead of the election. But what is all this talk about vote buying? It is also for us an indication of the progress that we are making in our democracy, because it is becoming increasingly clear to everyone that the votes are counting at the end of the day, and I've said this consistently, is enforcement of the laws. There are laws, but the laws are not enforced. So let me seize the opportunity to renew our appeal as a commission for the National Assembly in Nigeria to speedily pass the Electoral Offences Commission bill.
Discourse at this Royal Institute of International Affairs, though important, is unlikely to influence voters back home. While INEC can assure the international community it is doing all it can to tackle logistical delays, violence, fraud and vote buying, what actually occurs on February the 25th will be recorded in the legacy of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Juliana Olayinka, Channels TV News, London.
Well, that appearance of the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, also included an angle where he said, and I quote, "The 2023 election is the election of young people because they have the numbers. Even the majority of the PVCs collected are collected by young people. So out of the 93.4 million, 70.4 million registered voters are between the ages of 18 and 49. So how about we hear them? This morning, we have Sholakwe Adeshuyi, who is a legal practitioner and a youth development advocate, joins us here in the studio. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
We also have Rashida Abubakar, who is a youth and women advocate, joins us from via Zoom from Sokoto, as well as Chigozie Alex, who is a serial entrepreneur, humanitarian, and political strategist, also joining us virtually from Kaduna. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's begin with you. Well, first of all, how do you internalize that statement from the chairman of INEC, that this election belongs to young people?
Sounds good news to me. Sounds
really?
like good news. Oh yes, because, you know, Nigeria is obvious from the population and the numbers. The statistics shows that we have a higher population of teeming youths and strong people that I believe over the years have been deprived of the benefit of democracy. And this election presents an opportunity for them to actually demonstrate their love and their passion to have the nation that works. So it's good news to me.
Okay. Let's see, how do you open, what's your own position on this, Mr. Abubakar from Sokoto? Okay, I guess we'll come back to her. Well, Mr. Alex, if you're there, how do you open? What was your first opinion of this particular statement accredited to the INEC chairman?
with over 70 point something million Nigerians from 18 to 35 to 47 have been able to vote in these 2022 elections. I can tell you that the youths are going to be the deciders of the next president of Nigeria. The youths are going to decide the people that lead them come 2023 elections. And I'm very excited. But I have just one problem. If I were there, I would have said, Mr. Chairman, but can't you allow the youth to vote? Because there are a lot of bottlenecks around PVC collection and distribution, and that's where we are having issues concerning the youth. If you say the election belongs to the youth, then you should be able to allow the youth to exercise their franchise. There are a lot of ways we can do this. Technology has made it easy for us. So I see no reason why PVC collection will be a problem for the youths. Thank you very much.
Perhaps that raises another question, because what we have heard hitherto, even from the chairman of INEC, is that the people who have collected PVCs the most are young people. Perhaps it is safe to say that some of the issues that people may have collecting their PVCs are not generic. They're just maybe isolated cases here and there. Maybe, you know, logistics of the individuals themselves or of INEC, I don't know. Or do you have any reports to the fact that people are being denied access to their PVCs?
Oh, yes. Time and time again, we keep getting reports. I personally am one of the disadvantaged youths who stand a chance or who is at the verge of being disenfranchised, because I did a transfer of my voters, my polling unit. Since last year until date, the last time I went to the INEC office, they told me that it's not yet available. And I checked through the register. I insisted and I checked through the register, and I found my name, my details are there. But then my card is not there, and I keep asking when, and they're telling me to come back in 2 weeks' time. And meanwhile, the collection is ending on the 29th of January. So there are millions of youths like me. There are thousands of people out there who are being disenfranchised. If you go to Lagos, in fact, it's even worse in Lagos. If you go to the southeast, it's worse. In fact, I have been coordinating youths who have same issues with me, and we have a WhatsApp group with we have 2 WhatsApp groups that are filled with Nigerians, young people who want to collect their PVC, but they cannot collect their PVCs. And this is becoming obvious that the youth, a lot of will be disenfranchised, because I see no magic. I don't see how the thousands of people or millions of youths that are left to collect their PVCs will get their PVCs within a week, because 29th is just by the corner, and there's no way we can do this. There's no way INEC can do this. There's no magic that can be done. And we are saying the PVC, according to Section 47(1) of the Electoral Act, 2022 Electoral Act, is saying that we can vote with our voters card. There's nowhere where the Electoral Act says permanent voters card. And from the Longman Dictionary, a card is simply a plastic or a paper that can be used as identification. So if a card can be a paper or a plastic, so why can't we vote with our registration slip? Why can't we vote with our temporary voters card? Because the basic thing about the card from the dictionary is a slip or a paper that has, or a card that has your details.
Well,
that has your details.
Mr. Alex, just 1 second, and I think, you know, every Nigerian has heard you loud and clear about that one. Well, interestingly, we have a lawyer in the house. You'll get to that. But let's quickly get Abubakar to open with her own comments. How did it come to you when you heard the INEC chairman say this election, this general election of 2023, is for young people?
Personally, I think it's very interesting to know that the young people are coming out in masses to get their PVCs. It actually shows that the youth are ready to be involved in politics and political processes. So it is only right if during these elections, the youths are allowed to exercise their franchise. And by doing that is refusing to accept any distraction from any politician. As we all know, over the years, youth have been used as thugs. They have been given drugs to abuse, and most especially during election. And that's a very huge distraction to youth. So I'm urging on all the youth to focus and deliver the most capable candidate, because that's what we are after. By delivering the most capable candidate who has the interest of youth at heart, we know that by the time he is in position, we are sure the youth would be involved in all political processes, even if not by elective positions. We are hoping by appointive positions we get to see a lot of youth in power.
Well, Madam, if you can quickly respond to that part of the fact that, first of all, it's perhaps the loudest of the noise is about collecting their PVCs and, you know, being able to vote and all of that. But is there any space of validity in what you heard Mr. Alex say about people being able to vote with or without? Because I understand there is even a case in court saying that INEC should allow people to vote with their temporary slips or whatever it is.
Okay, so first, I think the comments from the young man, I forgot his name now, is Alex, very valid, because quite a number of youths, truly within this demography, have not been able to collect their voters card. We were in a meeting recently in the NGO, and quite a lot of people, we decided to take a sample, a poll of how many people already have their voters card, and continuous incidents such as change transfers, people who can't collect, and so we have those things are legitimate. However, I think it's also important that INEC haven't said now that this election belongs to the youth. This particular one belongs to the youth, so they should do everything within the law that allows the youth to vote. For instance, one of the things that's a concern to me is that 26 million of registered voters are students. And that means that if we understand that most of them perhaps registered when ASU was on strike. Which will also mean that even if they have their voters card and if the school is in session at that time, they are most likely not going to be at the location where they can exercise.
You even made it worse now, because a number of people who registered while at home,
yes,
are in school now. May not be able to collect their voter cards.
Absolutely. That, for me, it's a critical point. And I think that this is where INEC and ASU, government officials, people should come out loud and say, if the school can be locked for 9 months, then it can actually be kept closed for the election period for every Nigerian youth to exercise their franchise. I think very important. This is not something that we should just sweep under the carpet. We're talking about 26 million people who have, and then the INEC has gone to say that we have a large collection statistics. So let's take it that INEC is truthful, and so we don't have data to controvert what they have said. If that is the case, the important thing is to ensure that during the election, the students are at the place where they can actually exercise their franchise. That is so critical.
Well, it's critical, but we hope that the schools don't have to be closed so that young people can collect their PVCs.
I believe there's a way around it.
You know, perhaps, you know, the students can, don't you think the students can take a break?
That's what I'm saying.
For PVC
a legitimate break that is on. So you don't have a situation where some schools says if you don't come for lectures, you know, and then some parents will say, please don't jettison your education for, you know, all that. So it has to be something that is agreed, legitimate, that allows the student to go collect your voter's card and then at the same time exercise your franchise.
Well, this optimism expressed by INEC, by the INEC boss, that this election belongs to young people, does it perhaps, you know, corroborate that awakening that we saw, particularly on social media, before PVC collection even began, especially during the exercise? Does it corroborate, you know, the awakening expressed and demonstrated by young people in this election particularly?
Absolutely.
And does it also negate the views expressed particularly by political parties that demography on the Nigerian internet space is really not the reality on ground?
No, first, I think the evidence from INEC now corroborates the fact that Nigerian youths are not just awake. I think we saw this coming up from, I would like to put it back to 2020, when there was the awakening about the police brutality and all that demonstration. Yes, I think Nigerian youth, the outcome of that particular protest and agitation is resulting in us realizing now that we need to wake up. We can no longer stand aloof. and say, watch what these leaders are doing, but it's time to determine those who will lead. This will also, you see, that agitation as reflected, you'll find some youths who have decided to give up. Some have decided to move to the Jackpot syndrome, as it is popularly known, and we all know it. We can no longer deny this reality. So I think this information corroborates the fact that the youths are awake. On the other hand, that those who think that Nigerian youths are not particularly young people are not awake to their responsibility, I think this information has debunked that fact. The important thing now is to go beyond the statistics and ensure that the infrastructure and the necessary steps, decision, policies, programs that will ensure that every young person can vote is important. And I don't think it will just be something we should advocate on. It's something that governments and the INEC, we should begin to look at what are the critical things. Because remember, the right to vote is the right of every Nigerian. And if I am registered, have collected my PVC, then I must not be in any way tactically or subtly be denied the right to vote.
Besides the challenge of PVC collection, are you worried, about voting on election day, especially with concerns of insecurity and all of that? Very briefly, so I can also take it to our other guests.
Thank you. That's very important information, because important issue, because a lot of Nigerians, both old and young, are a bit concerned about the security. And so it's also, we know that over the years, young people have been used by politicians. And when you look at a nation that is highly impoverished, you have young people who are largely unemployed, not profitably engaged. They are easy tools, to be used. However, I think my concern is that young people today must, number one, not be afraid to exercise their vote. We already saw in the news the IGP, the INEC has confirmed that the security agencies have told them it's okay, election is going to be safe, they are ready to defend Nigerians. However, we must also go beyond that to say we're ready to defend ourselves, defend the vote, to come out on election days, and not just go as individuals, but collectively as a people. Thank God our polling booths are in communities, so you're, as it were, with people within that you live, you move, you see each other every day, and then you come together during the voting time at the polling booths to vote. So we can organize community-based security to ensure that on voting days there are no escalations whatsoever.
Ms. Rashida, you have, perhaps thoughts just as profound to contribute to this aspect of the conversation, the concern about security. How worried are young people about it?
Well, yeah, security is a major aspect when it comes to voting, because that's where it boils down to. Now, we have seen the INEC and security officials assured and reassured us of a maximum security during the period of voting. So we want to be hopeful and positive. I think in anything you're doing, if you want to achieve a goal, you really need to be hopeful and positive that it's going to end up well. So even though there are security concerns, but we are going to hope on the Nigerian security to handle those issues. We are hoping that on the day of election, we do not have to deal with anything that concerns security. Over here in Sokoto, we've launched the Vote Not Fight campaign, and I think every state should also do that. And it's majorly for the young people. We have to come out in our masses. As we are casting our vote, we are also ensuring that the environment is safe for the young people and every other Nigerian to come out and vote.
Well, I'm glad you informed us about your location, which is why I'd like to find out if you're just as concerned about the possibility that there are certain communities in some parts of the Northwest that may not be able to participate in this election because of the challenge of insecurity, communities that are reportedly held by bandits. And perhaps is there any proposal made by the state government there to ensure that such situations can be resolved before election day?
Well, certainly, yes. Over here in Sokoto, there are a few communities that are a bandit area. They are no-go area. As it is currently, the campaigns are not even going there yet. We have not received any official statement from the government on what they are doing to ensure that there is security before that time. But we are hoping the government will ensure security of citizens within the period of voting. We haven't received any official statement yet, but then we are hoping that there is going to be maximum security before the period of voting.
Okay, if I may come into the conversation here, can anyone hear me? Oh, okay, fantastic. Let me start with our guest in Sokoto. I'm glad that, at least on this particular program, we have at least 2 female respondents. And oftentimes when we use the term young people, you also see that women are another, will I say, constituency. And you have to ask, yes, much as young people also covers the demographic of young women, do you think that there are any specific fears that young women, as a subcategory, exercise about the elections?
Well, it's practically the same. The fear is based on the issue of security, and that's where everyone's concern is. Another thing is, well, yeah, it still boils down to security because it's their safety on the day of election. That's what everybody is concerned about. And I think in the course of our advocacy, we have received complaints on women and youth safety on the day of election. And we have extended it to the rights people. We are hoping, like I said earlier on, that the government would not fail us because it all boils down to the day of election. If you have collected your PVC and you are scared to come out and vote because you are thinking something might happen on the election day, that is a very big problem for us in Nigeria, because that means we are not going to see the numbers we are expecting to see. Apologies, as Nigerians, we have seen what we are facing, and we are hoping this ends soon.
Totally understandable, Rashida, totally understandable. I just wanted to, before I move away from you, I wanted to quickly confirm from you whether, the fears are any different from that we've experienced in previous years. Are they heightened from that of, say, 2019 or was it 2015? I don't know when you started voting, but I just wanted to know if it's any different from, the fears that have been expressed previously.
Okay, please, can I get that question again?
Are the fears any different from those that have been expressed previously by the by the female folk, for instance?
Well, another thing is over the years, as I mentioned, the issue of thuggery and drug abuse. Sadly, we have seen also a high rise of women being involved in such despicable acts. They are being used by politicians, especially during campaign and during the election. You would see that women, young women, are also abusing drugs. And they are also used as, over here, we call them area girls, which is really sad to see that it is not now only the youth that are a subject of concern. It is also the young women that are supposed to be protected. They are also vulnerable to such a despicable act. It's really discouraging for us here, and we are trying to see how we can bring the situation to the barest, lowest level.
Okay, let me go to Chigozie Alex, who is in Kaduna. Chigozie, let me ask you, you are now saying that INEC should allow voters who have been duly registered use their slips or temporary voter cards to be able to register. That's part of the advocacy which you're running. First, do you see any risks associated with this? And do you also think it could discourage a number of people who would want to, who should go out to pick up their permanent voter's card?
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I don't see any risk in it. You know, when we started advocating for this, a couple of young people reached out to us and like, Chigozie, isn't this going to give a window for rigging the elections? And I keep saying no, it won't, because we have the beavers. That's why we have the beavers, and the beavers is a biometric machine. So long as you're registered and your details is in the database, your data is in the INEC database, there is no way you can rig, right? Even if you're coming with a slip, someone can go and print slip or whatever. When you bring that slip, when you present it to the electoral officer, and your biometric is taken or your face is captured, and your details, your data is not found in the INEC database in the system, you won't be allowed to vote. It's that simple. So it gives a window. It allows everyone the opportunity, every registered voter has the opportunity to vote. Secondly, it also reduces the risk to INEC, because in fact, this will also be an advantage to INEC in the sense that nobody will care about the PVC anymore. Nobody will care about going to burn down INEC offices, because we've seen in the Southeast where INEC offices are being burnt down and people's PVCs destroyed. Millions of PVCs are destroyed. What happens to those people whose PVCs have been burnt down in INEC custody? You know, now if INEC make it a way, if INEC allow all registered voters to be able to vote, because the Beavers machine has a very awesome technology, kudos to the INEC. You can either be accredited with your last name, or two, the last 6 digits of your VIN number, or the barcode on the PVC. If you check the back of the PVC, there's a barcode. You can swipe it on the Beavers machine and it pops up your details. But that is just one of the methods of verification. You can also be verified with your VIN number, the last 6 digits, and your last name. So it is perfectly beautiful. So if INEC can decentralize it, what I suggest to the INEC is create a dedicated system where people, every registered Nigerian voter, can log on and print their PVC or their PVC, yes. So they can either decide to print it on a plastic card or print it on paper. That solved the problem, right? I printed my my national ID card last night, and it didn't take me 1 minute to print it, to get it out, right? I just logged on, downloaded the app, the NIMC app, and input my VIN number, my NIN number. Immediately I put in my NIN number, it popped up, it gave me my national ID card, and I saved it. Tomorrow I can print it out, I can even use it as I can just present it, oh, this is my national identity card, on my phone. And I will be able to, given any access or whatever I need. So why can't the INEC use that same technology? Of course, the national identity card is a national stuff, right? INEC should borrow that technology and do it. There can be a dedicated system and everybody will have that right. And INEC offices will stop being burnt. And people buying of PVCs will automatically stop, right? That's the way INEC are saying no to vote buying, right? So once they see that buying of PVCs are useless, because already some political parties are already buying PVCs, some people are already gathering people, collecting people's PVCs, and some PVCs are being littered in drainages and all that. So once you do this, all these things automatically stops, because they know, the people that have evil plans towards the election know that collecting people's PVC is useless. They know that going to burn down people's PVCs and burn down INEC offices is useless. Why? Because every Nigerian can simply get their voter's card anywhere they are, whenever they want, wherever they want, however they want it. So it is very, very simple. And going to your second question, you said, I think you talked about...
discouraging people from collecting the PVCs already printed.
Okay, yeah, it's not going to discourage people, because what it will do is it will encourage people, right? People can now print it on their own. People can now decentralize the printing. They can just print it at their own convenience. I'll go for the PVCs. It will even reduce the bottlenecks. Nobody will start fighting over PVCs again. If you go to INEC offices, you've seen where some INEC officials are extorting Nigerians. I have cousins that pay 2.5 to collect PVCs. It's very wrong. This is their rights. Give them their cards. They are not meant to pay for it. So when you do this, it won't discourage anyone. Rather, it will make it free. The INEC officers, I can tell you that some of those INEC officers are compromised. I saw a case in Lagos where a councillor of a political party is in the INEC office deciding who collects PVC and who does not collect PVC. That is very wrong. If your name is an Igbo name, they keep your PVC aside and tell you your PVC is not here. But then if it's a Yoruba name, they'll give you your PVC. That's very wrong. So if we have this means, these things will stop. It will automatically stop, and everybody will be. In fact, when you go to INEC offices, those bottlenecks will not be there again. People can easily collect their PVC. So, in a way, it's a win-win for INEC and it's a win-win for Nigerians.
Well, we'll see how the the Electoral Commission decides on this matter, because this advocacy was there before now, especially when we're using the card reader. People were saying, after all, people had to be verified with their biometrics. But we saw that time there was still the introduction of the incidence form, and that was widely abused. So let us see how this advocacy might work, especially since the incidence form has been scrapped and the BVAS will be the only form for accreditation. But let me go to our guest in our Lagos studios. People keep talking about how young people are the biggest demography on the INEC's data website. But they make certain assumptions as if all young people will vote in one direction. It's a democracy. Young people should be allowed to pick, or will be picking whoever it is that they determine will be the not just the presidential candidate, but also all the other different elective offices that are available. When people talk about this demography, do you get that sense too, that people oftentimes assume that all of these people will be voting in a certain direction?
Okay, thank you. That could be true, because maybe those who have that assumption are looking at the social media direction of the youths. If you look at those on the social media and the way they have over the years seem to be advocating a particular kind of change that they want to see in Nigeria, it is easy to begin to think that they are actually going towards a direction. But I agree with you that everyone should be allowed, and I believe in this point are allowed to choose who they believe will be a better candidate, or the kind of candidate that will deliver the nation that we look. I think the important thing is that a number of people, particularly the youth, are tired. The despondency is high, and it looks like there's a pressure for something new. So it's easy for you to think that, okay, because everybody is in this particular state of mind, then perhaps we're looking at this direction. But I think democracy is clear, and it is the power of every person to choose. And so I believe that this same demography, whether you're young and whether you're female, because amongst the young people are women too, and I think besides, all of us are going through particularly the same pressure. We're all having to queue up early in the morning for petrol. We're dealing with challenges in the educational system. The economy is there. We don't want to talk about the foreign exchange disparity and all that. So it's easy for all of us to be thinking perhaps that this total number are looking at a particular direction. But I don't think I get that feel. I just think it's a reflection of the need for the change that Nigerians are looking up to. And I believe that the youths haven't been confirmed right now as the highest demography that have registered and have collected their voters' card. Then I think the determination of who is going to be the next president and all the political positions, as you have mentioned, the House of Assembly and all that, would lie much more highly within the hands of the decisions that this youth make with their voting power this time, basically.
Okay. We'll come back and talk about that demography a bit more after this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're still here with our guests and we're talking about young people and the perception of the 2023 elections. Let me continue with the lawyer in our Lagos studios and ask about how you perceive the knowledge of young people about what is needed to be able to deliver a candidate at the end of any election. We're seeing today in the papers, just yesterday, senior advocates of Nigeria raising question about something we had assumed we knew all along, that majority of votes and two-thirds across 25% across two-thirds of the federation were always required at the federal level. At the state level, you have to also win 25% of two-thirds of local government in addition to winning majority votes. But looks like right now there is some question over that. Do you think that young people, beyond trying to get their permanent voters cards, beyond registering for elections, etc., is anybody taking an interest in what is really required by law to be able to deliver a candidate, the do's and don'ts of elections, and what we should know about, some items in the Electoral Act?
Thank you. I think that information was very, very, very important because a number of young people are not particularly informed or have details of what it takes. It's not just young people. I think the average Nigerian does not have a full knowledge of the law and what is required. And so it's not surprising that even those of us that think we know, sometimes, the law can be a bit, how do I describe it now? You may not be, sometimes it sounds like you're not even sure, because what you think is your own understanding, by the time it's looked at in the position of the law, or perhaps before a court of law, there's another interpretation. And I think the important thing here that Senior Silk, Learned Silk, mentioned yesterday is so important for us to really look at the critical aspect of what it takes to determine who is the leader, who emerges as a winner of a particular election. And what the law says, I think the law is clear. It is the court that actually interprets clearly the position of the law. And I like the fact that it came up, but beyond just coming up, I think by now we should have had such matters perhaps before the court to be properly interpreted. So we're not waiting till after the election, so it does not become a tool to actually complicate the entire process.
My apologies for putting in. In all of these, I mean, we're still talking about the process here. But there's a question Bukola asked the other time about security. And I think, to me, that's like asking how knowledgeable, how concerned, how issue-oriented are the conversations among young people. You said something quite, salient the other time, that, look, depending on where you're looking, there are several youths who are looking in various directions of all of the parties, irrespective. There are 18 presidential candidates anyway, so all young people could be looking in all 18 directions, and at least that's for the presidency and countless others, other states and all of that. So do you think the issues, beyond the sentiments of it, do you think people, especially young people, have really been able to process the real core issues as it concerns them, not just now, but futuristically?
Okay, so I would say yes, and I would say no. Okay. I would say yes because if you look at the understanding now of the youths in Nigeria today, it has improved when compared to the previous years. There seemed to be a rise in the concern, a rise in the knowledge that they have, a rise in the desire to be a part of what's going on. However, I would also say no, because when it comes to the real salient technical issues, we can still say that we're not there yet.
Such as? Okay,
so very important, one of the critical things is the point that's raised as to what determines who wins. So a number of young people are just looking at, are you voting for this, are you voting for that? And, you can tell the level of involvement in terms of issue, discussion, and details that young people have. So that hasn't really grown effectively. But I think that is part of what we should be doing it as far as advocacy is concerned for a lot of NGOs. We need to bring that knowledge. But I must tell you why some people may not be so concerned with the details. The challenges they face on a daily basis are enormous. So an average young Nigerian is looking at, how do I just have some financial capacity, empowerment. Others are looking at educational issues. Others are looking at economic issues. So they may not look at the details. And this is where CSOs, NGOs,
essentially,
and
you're saying political education is very important.
Political education needs to be higher amongst you, certainly.
Mr. Abubakar, there's that survey, I'm sure you're aware of it, the multidimensional poverty study done by the NBS in collaboration with a few other bodies, that says of all the states that are most multidimensionally poor in Nigeria, Sokoto State comes tops. Most multidimensionally poor, I think it's more than 90% of indigents of Sokoto are said to be multidimensionally poor. So do you think people are aware and indicating their interest to vote in this particular concern? Is that something of salient concern to the people? Is it issue-based enough? Is it an issue salient enough for people to say we're going to vote along these lines? Mr. Abubakar, can you hear me? Could you please unmute? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, I think you have muted again.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, it's better now. Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, of course, this is a major issue of concern. As an advocate and as a politician, we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. We have been in the room with our major stakeholders, and we told them that we are afraid that this election is going to be the highest bidder because of the rise of poverty. So people are now looking at the 1 naira, 2 naira they are going to get to give out their votes. But at the other end, as we are sure that this is a major problem for us, we are also trying our best to see how we can convince people to not sell their votes. Because you have 8 years. By the time you sell your vote for 1 minute, you have 8 years consequences to deal with. And I am glad from the responses we are getting, people are understanding that it is not worth selling your vote. In fact, with some of the responses we've had, that they rather stay poor than to go into another administration that will bring other predicaments upon them. We are still on it, and we are not stopping until after election. We have to ensure that people do not see it as a hindrance to giving out their vote for the right candidate.
Ms. Rashida, let me start with you yet again to look at another very important issue as far as these elections are concerned, which is the problem of or the ability or inability of IDPs to vote in these elections. Although the Commission has said that it has revised the electoral law to ensure that IDPs can participate in the election. But with over 1 million IDPs in Nigeria's Northwest and North Central, what can you tell us about their participation in the process pre-election in terms of registration and PVC collection? And from what you see, can you tell us whether they can participate in the elections?
Thank you so much. Even from this your question, honestly speaking, the IDPs turnout has been really low. We have not seen them come out because of lack of security. Because coming out now, what they feel, what is the government going to tell them? Why are they even voting? There is that sort of, why should we come out and vote when you failed us? We are here because of you. But then I think it still boils down to the government going back to do what they can. We as individuals, as advocates, we cannot do it alone, because we lack the words to convince these people to come out. When you go and meet them, there's always the complaint that why should we come out and vote? What do they have to offer us? After all, they put us into this position. But I think if the government and the security agencies and the NGOs, the advocates, the politicians, even though they would hardly listen to them, will still come out, beg for their forgiveness, because they have been wronged. Whether we accept it or not, these people have been wronged. They need reassurance that this is going to be a new phase, and we need them to come out and vote so that we can start this new phase together. So it's really discouraging because we are not seeing them come out in numbers to participate in any issues that concern election. I don't know for other parts of the country, but here where I am, I don't see the IDPs participating in issues that are concerning election. And I think we need to do better as a country. We need to come together and assure these people that their votes really count and we have their best interests at heart.
We hope that disillusionment does not also preclude them from participating in PVC collection as well. But very quickly, about relating young people to the unemployment rate and the issue of vote buying. Does this awakening, does it also provide a form of, guarantee that they would not involve in vote buying, particularly when you consider the high unemployment rate across the federal level and subnationals as well?
Okay, the issue of vote buying, beyond it being a criminal offense, as far as election is concerned, it's a question of value. Individual value system, and this is the major issue, is because we have a decadence of our value system amongst the old and the young in Nigeria. That's why we are here, apart from the fact that we have unemployment and poverty. So I think that amongst the youth, the awakening and the desire to have a new nation should supersede this particular ramification or whatever it is we think we get, or gratification that we get from the vote buying. We've heard Rashida say something that some of the people there say, I would rather even remain poor than take the 10,000 or perhaps 20,000 that you give for me to sell my vote. And I think if we look at the fact that young people in Nigeria currently must be the highest educated, you have the highest educated people amongst this demography. So it will not be a point of uneducation. It will be a question of whether they want to exchange their conscience.
You say you should supersede, but are you confident that it will supersede? That's this political awakening.
I think I am confident. I think that Nigerian youths have gotten to the point where they look beyond what they want to get now. So look, if you look at the rate at which people are jetting out of the country, it will tell you that it's either you find every time we are amongst young people, that's the conversation of frustration with the system, the conversation of finding a way out. And so you find those who are saying, look, we're staying here, we must make it right now. Okay. So I'm confident.
Well, can we have just your last words, Mr. Alex, in just 30 seconds, if you were to propose a strategy for young people? In what direction, what would be your strategy for young people? You have 30 seconds.
All right, thank you very much. So my strategy for young people is get your PVC. Insist, keep insisting, don't give up. Yeah, it might be frustrating, but keep insisting till you get your PVC and lend your voice to INEC. INEC should hear us. Okay. The INEC has said we are the deciders, so we are appealing to INEC to allow us vote with or without PVCs. Thank you very much. I guess we'll have to see, because Section 47 of the Electoral Act is clear. You have to come with a voter card. It's very explicit there. But then, hey, you've called out INEC, so I guess we'll allow INEC to do its job there. Chigozie Alex is a serial entrepreneur, humanitarian, and political strategist. He joined us virtually from Kaduna. Rashida Abubakar from Sokoto is a youth and women advocate. And we've also had a lawyer here with us in the person of Sholaku Adesuyi, who is a legal practitioner and youth development advocate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
ladies and gentlemen, for being here this morning. Well, right after now, we take on another issue of equal concern, it also has some relationship with the elections. Please stay with us. So next we have this conversation around the Office of the Inspector General of Police, and there are those who would think, hey, this was a matter laid to rest as far back as 2021, and here it is happening again. So joining us this morning to have a conversation around this is Monday Ubani, who is a legal practitioner and chairman, section of Public Interest and Development, SPIDL of the NBA. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Ubani. Is this, in your opinion, something that needs so much attention, or is just one of those things that we're going to let it go after some time? The court's already decided on it. Or is there something else?
Yeah, thank you, Ayo, for having me. Good morning. Ayo, I think that the court in 2021 failed to address the issue as to whether this issue of 4 years tenure that is provided by the Police Act is meant to override Section 18 of the same Police Act that says every serving police officer has a timeline within which to put in the service. 35 years, pensionable years, or 60 years by age. Now, whichever one is earlier. Now, if you have such a provision that is even a later provision, I mean, you talk about Section 7.6 now, you mentioned 4 years. And then there is Section 18 that says every serving police officer, including the IG, who has 35 years to put in service or 60 years by age, is a conflict and requires a clearer interpretation by the court. But unfortunately, Justice Adamu of the Federal High Court, who heard the matter, failed to address that issue, but made different ratios. He was saying, one, the Act itself did not specifically exclude the president from renewing the tenure of the IG. And secondly, that since there is a other relevant body to consider, like the police council, pending the consultation with the police council, that the president has a right to still retain the IG, pending the time the substantive IG will be appointed. That was the ratio that the court adopted and did not address this issue of the tenure. If you have maybe 1 year or 2 years for you to retire and you are appointed an IG, can that particular Section 7.6 now extend your tenure, your service year, from the normal year agreed upon by the service rules and the Act itself to another, 4 years? Is it the meaning of that particular section? Was that the intention of the lawmakers? So that opportunity was missed, and I think that the matter is presently before the Court of Appeal, and I feel that that issue will be well addressed. And so, based upon that section, you can see that the president has also lashed in on it and said, oh, the IG has 4 years tenure going by the Act, and then has gone ahead now to extend his tenure. I don't know how many years now, either by 2 years or months. So they were not specific as to the tenure that he's going to enjoy as way of extension.
Or is in conflict with itself, going by the provisions of Section 18 and Section 47 of the Electoral Act, Section 7 of the Police Act, beg your pardon, which is clear, subsections 4, 5, and 6 of Section 7 of the Police Act, which made, those allusions that you talked about. Would you then say that that section is in conflict with Section 18 that you quoted?
My view is that there is no conflict whatsoever. What Section 7.6 did was to specifically mention the tenure of the IG. At every point in time, if you are a public officer, to be appointed that requires confirmation, the Act always make a provision as to your tenure. Are you going to be there for 2 years or for 4 years? That is actually what 7.6 did, by saying every serving IG has the tenure of 4 years. Now, it does not in any way make it right for somebody whose tenure will soon, whose service will soon elapse, to now be extended by the provisions of that act. No, that couldn't have been the intention of the drafters of that law. What it says is that you have a tenure, quite all right. That tenure is certain, as long as you have followed the normal process in order to appoint that IG, and who has been confirmed properly. Now, having done that, if you have years to stay in the ministry or in the service, and your time has expired, there is no way you can use that particular section to elongate that person's tenure, because that actually will defeat all logic. There are those who are there, who are also aspiring to be an IG, and they enter into the service just like you did. So why would you now want to stay where others want to be after you have exhausted all your service years and all that? And you are now you are blocking them by that appointment. And you are also destroying the issue of patriotism, and you are dampening morale. If I enter into a service, I have aspiration to arrive to the highest level in that particular profession. But all of a sudden, somebody is being used now to block my position. And I may probably even retire, and the man is still in service, even though probably he entered before me. So it is not a very correct logic, for us to interpret that act. And the court felt, in its duty to really, examine that possible conflict and give a clearer picture, so that the subsequent action of the government will be in tandem with the law. The intention of the law is to ensure that you have a tenure. But if your time of service has expired, then there is no way that particular section will extend your tenure. And it's clearly something that is logical. As I said earlier, there is no reason for this. And let me also remind you that the Act says at any point in time, the IG is no longer there. The most senior police officer, we step in. In other words, there is no vacuum, because that was the reason the judge gave, that there mustn't be a vacuum at any point in time. But the Act itself has even created a situation where there won't be any vacuum, because the most senior will take over the position of the IG, acting pending the time there will be a substantive IG. So it's a correct way of doing things. Our way of doing things in this country, I keep on emphasizing, we always follow the wrong way of doing things. That's why the president can stay for almost 4 years without handing over to his vice. For all the months he's traveled outside the country, they were waiting for 21 days before the law itself can be applicable, whereas that was not the intention of the Act, of the Constitution.
Mr. Ubani, which is the overriding argument here? The need for the country to have a police IG who is the current captain to steer the ship at this all-important stage of the elections, or the need for the law to take precedence now, especially because he's turning 60 right amid the elections. So for you, which is the overriding argument?
The overriding argument should be the issue of national interest. National interest at every point in time is that we must build strong institutions and not strong individuals. The moment your life revolves around an individual in any institution, it is a wrong procedure, and it's something that we should not begin to create as a precedent. Rather, institutions should be very strong, that one IG will be in a position to act in accordance with his tenure, in accordance with his term of years of service. Then another person who is also aspiring to be one will come into the particular position that is the law itself has allowed him to come in, and then perform his duty that is already laid down. There is no question of using somebody now, oh, he's indispensable. Because that argument is that, oh, this IG now is indispensable, he has to stay and they steer the election of 2023. What makes him a specialist on election, Matt? What makes him a specialist more than other police officers and other? In other words, there are no serious-minded police officers who are also intelligent enough to probably guide the electoral process as a police officer. So that is the argument. So I think that the national interest should prevail at every point in time, not sectional interest, not personal interest. Because what has happened now is that the president now feels that this man is the most competent individual. Who tells him that? What is the criteria that he has used now to say that this man can only be the one to steer the electoral process, peacefully, other than other police officers who are also entitled to be an IG?
So what exactly is at play here? Because, of course, the federal government is aware of the law, what the law says, the requirements of the law. So what exactly is the interest that is playing out here?
Well, you are asking me to guess. I don't know what I will say at this juncture. The only thing I'm going to do is to guess. The president himself has always done it this way. At any point in time, there is any opportunity for somebody other than the person they prefer at any point in time to come into a position, the president will always breach the rules and the laws in order to ensure that he has his way. His whim and caprices always prevail. It has happened with the appointment of DSS officers. It has happened with even the military. He has always allowed his own personal, ego and his personal choice to supersede that of national interest. And as I said earlier, if the law is very clear as to what should happen, why would he disobey the law? The particular police act they are quoting now that says 4 years says also that a police officer has 35 years or 60 years, and that is section 18. If he says that and says that a most senior officer at any point in time should also step in if there is no, IG, it's there in the act itself. So the act itself is comprehensive as to what should happen at every point in time. But the president, as usual, will rather, observe the law in breach.
You have said that what should prevail is national interest, and you've gone ahead to define what national interest is for you, which you say is building strong institutions. But you and I know that our institutions are not where we want them to be, that largely they still revolve around whoever the head of an organization is. So when you talk about national interest, is that something futuristic, which you're speaking of, or something which you think already exists and, there'll be no vacuum left or felt, assuming the IG were to, stricto sensu, follow the rules?
Again, that is an intelligent question. You see, issue of building institution must start, someday. And I think that this government that came with a mantra of obeying the rules of law and doing things rightly, because that was a promise they made in 2015, that things were being done wrongly by the previous government, that when they come in, they will begin to do things properly. One would have expected that with this government, certain things of the past, certain behaviors, that we consider very bad, would have stopped. But we have been taken back several years by this particular government in terms of misgovernance, in terms of bad behavior, even observance of rule of law. So I think that we must begin to insist that things be done properly. That has always been my position. That why this nation is retarded and why this nation is not making progress and why people do not take Nigeria serious is that our leaders do not know how to do the right thing. Even when the law is explicit, even when things are clear, when it's even logical for them to do, they always prefer to do the wrong thing. So I say that I'm of the opinion that we must start doing the right things now. I must not, there must be a day we must say, oh, this government has started to lay a very good precedent. It must start with a government that comes with a lot of goodwill and a lot of promise. So I feel that this government should have been the one to start. That's why I'm not hoping for it to be futuristic. I'm saying that it must be something we must begin to do now. If the law is explicit, if the law is very clear, and you are the one that signed the law, you have no right to observe your own law you sign in breach. That is my position.
Yeah, Mr. Ubani, I mean, the very fact that the president signed the law or maybe already shows that he has good intentions to follow it. But you understand very much that these are extraordinary times. Our elections are war. That's how politicians see it. And that if a process is put in place to ensure that things are done properly with regards to security during an election, is it right? So some people say that this is now between common sense and the law, that after the presidential elections are conducted, before the governorship elections commence, that we remove the IG.
What I'm saying is that if we have put structures in place, if proper conditions have been laid, there is no reason why an IG that has retired, should continue to be in office while we have other, IGs that operate private market. And there is nothing that says that he can handle it better than the person that is next to him. There is no criteria we're using now to judge this president IG that, oh, he will be the person to handle this electoral process, security-wise better than anyone that will take over from him. That would be the argument, that he is better off. What is the criteria? What makes you even think that the person that will come after him will not even do better than what he's doing presently or what he will want to do, in the electoral process? So my take is, look, I just want things to be done, properly as a nation. That has always been my position in this nation. That, look, let's begin to do right things and, set clear precedent that everyone comes and say, oh, thumbs up for the man who has done this. That is the only way we can build this nation. But the moment we begin to cut corners and begin to rationalize it, and it retires us. It makes the country to be retarded. And it makes other nations to look at us as a nation that is unserious. Because countries, respect nations that follow their rules. The president signs it. I mean, he was the one that signed the law. So why would the president now be the one to breach the law that he himself signed? He looked at the provisions of the law, and they're all, clearly right. And Bible said that God created the heaven and earth, and he saw that everything was beautiful. And he says, go and occupy. So if the president signed the law, why would the president be the one to breach that law that he signed that has this explicit provision as to what should happen at every point in time with regard to the IG that he has just now renewed his tenure? So I think that we must begin to insist. As I tell you, there is no criterion that says that this man will handle this process better than anyone that will take over from him. That is my position.
Let me clarify what it is that you're saying. By the pronouncements we heard yesterday, is it that the tenure of the IG has been renewed, or is just extended, perhaps just to cover the elections?
I think the man was making a reference to Section 7.6, which talked about 4 years. And if you're going by what has happened with the present IG, I think he has stayed up to 2 years. So they may have extended it because he was not explicit as to how many months or years they've given him. They may have extended his tenure to 2 years. To 2 years, meaning that he has 4 years within which to occupy that position. And I said that the court missed that opportunity to give a clearer interpretation of that section. Does it mean that if my years of service has expired and I'm appointed, maybe a month before my service year will expire, that means that that section has now extended my service year by additional 3 years or 4 years? That is what the court should interpret. Or does it mean that when my time comes, my service year, then I should go, let another person take over? So that particular opportunity was missed by the lower court, but I think that the Court of Appeal will be able to correct, that particular interpretation and give us a clearer picture. Because the law is, you have years to stay in the civil service, 35 years or 60 years in age, whichever one is earlier. So why would somebody now use an act now to extend somebody's tenure? Unless you are saying there is no competent person to take over. Of course, private companies do it. When somebody is an expert and is retiring, they can bring that person on contract. It is allowed. But is in this case, don't we have men? There are so many DIGs, there are so many AIGs. So why are you now saying that this man only can be the only one to guard the electoral process, security-wise? What criteria did you use? And then why are you now demoralizing those who are behind? It's not fair. It's not fair for those also who joined the service in order to attain the highest position in their career. And you are now using this man now to block their way. It is not right. Let's not encourage that. It's not a good behavior.
Well, while we hope that will be sorted out as to whether, security of tenure, because that's another thing that we know that the Police Act was trying to protect. Whilst we hope that, that will be sorted out as to know whether security of tenure takes precedence over retirement age or, retirement age, do you think that debate should be had during this electoral period? Don't you think the election should be over before we begin to go and start testing the law or, finding out what should happen?
You are still saying the same thing, that we must allow this man to continue to be in that. But you see, the conversation has started. And I think there are some people also who feel that this is not the right thing for the president to have done in the circumstance. And it's good we raise this consciousness, so that we begin to do. I'm a public interest lawyer, and I'm interested in things being done properly. And that's why I go to court most often when I see that the laws are being violated by those who are supposed to observe the law. You're asking us to wait until after the election before we can test this law, but I think that we must begin to insist that right things be done. Some people are already going to court over this matter. The Court of Appeal decision, I hope they will hasten it in order to actually give a proper interpretation of the issue of security of tenure and the issue of retirement of service. Whether you can use that security of tenure now to extend the years of service of a public servant. That, again, is what the court should clarify. But I think that it will not be right for those who are aspiring to that position to be blocked by a man who entered with the same view, with the same ambition. But somebody's ambition now is being killed because of one individual. And so many of them who are queuing up in order to be an IG, who may retire now if you extend this man's tenure. And this man will still be in service. Is it fair? For one individual, many others suffer. So I think that it's an argument that is a conversation that is ongoing. Let's begin to debate these issues and insist on right things being done for us as a nation, because that is the only way people begin to respect us as a civilized nation.
Okay, let me take you up on, because some people will also argue on precedent, because if this matter goes to court, there will be some people have argued in the past that positions like like that of the IGP, DG Customs, CG Immigrations, even army chiefs, for instance, the military chiefs. We heard this argument during the tenure of the military chiefs, some military chiefs whose time for retirement had already come, but were still in that position. There's been question as to whether or not, these are political positions and are done at the pleasure of the president. So, for instance, the CG of Nigerian Customs is not even somebody from among the Nigerian Customs. So, I'm just wondering, has there been any debate or any decision with regards to the powers of the president on appointing whosoever he pleases, whether or not those powers are strictly political powers given to the chief executive?
I love this question also. I think if the positions you've mentioned are not governed by law, we can now give the president the latitude, to do whatever he wants to do with regards to either renewal or extension or appointment. But most of these positions you mentioned are governed by law. And as long as they are governed by law, for us as public interest lawyers, we will insist fair and due compliance with the provisions of the law. That is the only way people will begin to regard you as running a democratic government, because you have a law, and the law makes provision as to what should happen at every point in time. It's not as if there is any lacuna. Even if there is any lacuna, the court has a right, to make interpretation to, cover the lacuna. But in this case, as I said earlier, the Police Act 2020, very explicit as to tenure of whoever is coming in as an IG. Very explicit as to years of service. Whoever has attained those years, he must leave. Very, very explicit as to vacuum. If there is any vacuum at every point in time, there is somebody that should step in. So if the law itself has made such explicit provision, will it be now right for us to leave things like this to the whims and caprices of the president? That, again, is something that cannot be tolerated in a democratic setup, unless we are running a military regime whereby he can do whatever he wants to do. But when you have laws, rules, and regulations, you must insist that those rules and regulations must be complied at every point in time, unless there is an emergency, unless there is an exigency that requires you to now depart and begin to do certain things, which will be logical and, and clear to everyone.
My apologies for butting in. Section 7 is very clear that the Inspector General of Police shall be a senior officer, shall be a senior police officer, not the highest. A senior police officer, not below the rank of so. But section... Yes, but the appointment shall be by the president on the advice of the police council from among 7 members of the police force. Now, if you go to this particular, this other section 18 that you quoted earlier, which speaks about how the person can be removed and all, section 8, which you quoted earlier, said that every police officer shall be on recruitment or appointment serve in the police force for a period of 35 years or until he attains the age of 60 years. None of this information is lost on the police council. None of this information is lost on the Police Service Commission, for instance. Is there something missing within the gap between the time the president receives the recommendation and the time the pronouncement is made? Because some people have to recommend to him. So I expect that some of all this information would have been factored in. The length of years the person will be by the time he should retire, the number of years the person has to live, before the person is 60. So, talking about the process of that appointment, do you see a fault there, something that needs adjusting? Or maybe perhaps if we addressed it from that way, all the facts were on the table, maybe the appointment could have been readjusted?
Every government is supposed to be very smart. You must run a smart government. We're in 2023. Now, what does it mean? You appoint an IG, you have his record, that this IG was enlisted into the service this year, and you have an idea of when he's going to retire. And you know there's going to be a process, for a replacement at every point in time. You know when that replacement should take place, or even when the process should start. As I said earlier, you have to be a smart government. Now, if you have the idea of when this man is enlisted and know when he's going to leave, and know when you must start the process for replacement in case he's on his way out. You are supposed to follow all that process. Let's maybe make an exception to Adamu's case where we heard that the president just got to know that the man will retire, he's going to leave office in 2 days. And that was sometime in 2021. So he had to now to renew his tenure for 3 months. But in the case of Babana, you are talking about January. We're in January. This man will retire in March, 1st of March. That is when he will attain 60 years. Now, why wouldn't you start the process of getting a replacement in consultation with the police council earlier on? I mean, when in January, you can complete that process between now and February. So why must you now begin to extend his tenure in January for a man that his tenure is expiring in March, showing that you have no intention of even having a replacement in the first place, and you don't even want to initiate the process. So you're not running a smart government. So that is my conclusion. So I'm saying that there's nothing missing in the act, Ayo. There is nothing, except that most times we use the law in a wrong manner, and that is why we run into a problem. If we are smart, we must know when the man enters, we know when he's going to leave, we must know when to start the process of replacement, and start on time, and then have it done properly, so that everyone will say, this is right, that this government has gotten their acts together.
Mr.
Most
Ubani,
times, we do the wrong things, always, and that is my problem with this nation. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Ubani, you're now trying to do the right thing, and I relate this to the argument on the excessive powers of the president, vis-a-vis the need to build strong institutions. If there was to be some form of constitutional amendment that should be considered in this case, where you're considering an alternative to the appointment of the Police Inspector General of Police, perhaps if it were to now be placed in the powers of the Police Council, can you trust that institution, to now take up the responsibility of appointing the Police Inspector General of Police, particularly if we went by how that institution has handled issues like as simple as recruitment in the past?
To be sincere with you, and I'm very sorry to say it on national television, I don't trust any institution in Nigeria. And the reason is not far-fetched. We don't have strong institutions. And as long as we don't have strong institutions, it is not in my position to say, oh, I will trust this if we now change the system from the presidency now to the council now being the one to recruit. I don't trust any institution in Nigeria because of things like this. No institution is allowed in Nigeria to operate, fully, independently, and in charge of their institution. We don't build strong institutions. We build strength around individuals, and that shouldn't be. So,
what would you recommend
to answer your question directly, I don't trust any institution to do any right thing in this country because we have not cultivated the culture of compliance with our rules, because they will find a way of circumventing even when there is express provision. We have seen what the president has done with even when there is express provision in a law that he signed. He's circumventing it. So what stopped the council from also doing it? So we don't have institution that is actually working to perfect, impetus. They are working to the level that most of us who observe other nations do things rightly, is working. We don't have any institution like that.
So what would you recommend, Mr. Ubani?
My recommendation is that we must obey the law. No matter how imperfect that law is, no matter how we think that the proper thing is this, contrary to the law, we must obey our law. If you begin to obey our laws, and the courts are up to, in terms of making sure that anything that is wrong, the court will be very bold enough to say, no, we are not going to go this way. I can assure you that most things in this country will be done right. People will not enter somebody's land by force, knowing fully well that the court will say, no, I will not accept it. Government will not begin to disobey laws, because they know that there is court. There is a court that I will say, no, I am not going to look at your face, or that you are the one who appointed me. I will tell you that this thing is wrong, and it's wrong, and I will go ahead and commit you for contempt. If we begin to have institutions like court working that way, and people insisting on things being done properly, I can assure you we have a nation that you and I will be very proud of. But for now, our leaders get away with grim murder because we accept it, we tolerate them, and the courts are not there for us in order to bring them to a position of obedience. The court must make people to obey the law. That's the only way to work. The courts have onerous duty in this country to get our nations to work. I have said it 50%, let me not say 80. I said 80 the other time. Maybe 50% of our problem will be solved if our judiciary will begin to hold people accountable in this country. That's my position, and I maintain it, and I insist on it.
Whether or not we're indicting the judiciary, I don't even want to get into that conversation this morning. But we have to thank you very much. Monday Ubani is Chairman, Section of Public Interest and Development at of Speedo at the NBA. Thank you again for being a part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, one of your own contributions to the program this morning is sent in from God Santa who says, on this topic, the retirement age or expiry date should supersede the usage of time. If a medication has a 2-year lifetime from its production date and you purchase it 2 weeks to the end of its shelf life, does not mean you can still use it after it has expired. Ouch.
Well, Festus Akimboye chooses to talk about young people, and he says, no doubt that our young people have felt let down for decades, but they can play a huge role in this year's election if they come out to vote and get involved. INEC chairman must walk the talk by making sure that all our registered young people collect their PVCs.
Olagunju Oladele has this. It says INEC should adopt home delivery of PVCs at owner's cost, trigger an optional PVC home delivery service, surcharge to owners in partnership with private sector, create a portal for people to indicate interest for courier delivery and make payments.
Sounds very nice, but hey, so many questions. Henry Nwunono is next, and he says about the 2023 elections and bottlenecks, INEC has moved steps ahead with technology, but it could have done more. If people can open bank accounts today from their bedrooms, use one card to transact in multiple banks, and it could have done better with available newer technologies.
That's if INEC will consider all these innovations. Well, Ibitoria says, speaking of youth participation in the 2023 election, could it also be that at the rate of the Jakbaism, many of these uncollected PVCs belong to those who may have relocated? Well,
questions. You know, one of the things that I learned when I went to collect my PVC was that there are still cards from as far back as 2019, 2011 that are still uncollected now. When will we all decide to get our PVCs? Just go and get your PVC, please. Just get it. You paid for it already. Just get it, so that what Marquez said about paying 3.23 trillion naira in subsidy, by the way, that means you, the Nigerian, are paying 16,150 naira every year for subsidy. Anyway, Amaya Makinde, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
And I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf, hoping that INEC will listen to some of the suggestions from young people. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.